Hello and good morning, everyone. Welcome to Social Security Myths Debunked, brought to you by OneTeam Financial, Citizens Bank, Focus New Jersey, Manufacturing Counts, Minding Your Business, the New Jersey Business Magazine, and our podcast, Planet New Jersey. I'm Katie Whitcamp, part of the business development team here at the New Jersey Business and Industry Association. Our presenter today is Ash Awalia, the head of Social Security Planning at OneTeam Financial. With nearly 30 years of experience, he is one of the nation's foremost experts on Social Security and oversees the development of claiming strategies to maximize retirement income benefits. Ash has spent decades mastering the more than 2,700 social security, rules to help his clients identify their most suitable filing strategy or sweet spot and provide the most benefits upfront without leaving too much money on the table over their life expectancy. In this next hour, Ash will help you understand one of the most important and often misunderstood programs in the U.S. Whether you're planning for retirement, already receiving benefits, or just curious about how the system works, this session will provide clarity and practical insights. Just a few housekeeping matters before we get started. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be emailed to you along with today's presentation, so be on the lookout for that. But I'd also like to draw your attention to the question tab. Ash would be happy to take your questions, so get them in as they come to you via the questions chat box. So now, without further ado, Ash, take us away.
Thank you, Katie. Let me pull up the PowerPoint here. Get going. Okay, terrific. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for attending today's webinar on Social Security Myths Debunked. I'm going to go through the top 25. There's probably a couple of hundred, but these are important ones. So just briefly, by way of background, I've spent the last 30 years doing financial planning, and in particular, retirement income planning. But the one area I didn't know that much about was Social Security. And I realized that Social Security is just too important a part of my clients' retirement planning not to do a deeper dive on. So I started calling all the smart CPAs I know, all the smart tax attorneys I know, even other financial planners to see what they knew about Social Security. And guess what? They didn't know anything either. And I thought, wait a minute, how is this possible? It's such a ubiquitous benefit. Everybody has it. And yet there don't seem to be any experts in it. So I decided, you know what? I'll become an expert. I'll take a weekend and learn it. Good luck with that. There's over 2,700 rules, as Katie mentioned. Most couples have over 500 possible filing scenarios. They think they have like one or two. You know, when they stop work, they go to Social Security to find out how much they get. Or they may know if they delay the start of their benefits, they'll get a higher benefit amount. But because of those two simplistic approaches, over 90% of people collecting Social Security are getting less money than they're eligible to receive. So I make sure that my clients don't leave any Social Security money on the table. I grew up in Canada, which is great, right? You got a Canadian teaching Social Security to CPAs and tax attorneys. But anyway, I went to Wharton Business School. I'm a certified financial planner. Nowhere do they teach Social Security. I won a couple of awards in Social Security planning. I was the advisor of the year in 2016. But as you can see, it's in the press every day now. For most people, Social Security is their only pension. They have IRAs and 401ks, but you can outlive those, right? Very few people, maybe 5–10% of people have pensions, but they all have a pension. They have Social Security. It's one of the richest pensions ever created. So before I dabble into the myths, let me just go over some basic rules you should know about Social Security. The first thing you should know is, what is your full retirement age? Okay, everybody has a different full retirement age depending on the year they were born. If you're born between 1943 and 54, it's 66. If you're born 1960 or later, 67. And in between those years, they tack on a couple of months. So what's the big deal about full retirement age? Well, once you reach full retirement age, that's the first time you can collect your Social Security benefits, regardless of what your earnings are. You can start Social Security as early as 62, but if you make more than $23,400, every $2 you earn above that, they take back $1. But once you get to full retirement age, you can make as much as you want and collect Social Security without a penalty. But Social Security makes nothing simple. Look at this chart. Look at the year you were born and ask yourself, could you have more than one full retirement age? You could if you were born twice, right? But the reality is you could have more than one full retirement age. I just had this case. My client was born in 1956. Her full retirement age is 66 and 4 months for her own benefit, but she's a widow. She's actually eligible to collect Social Security survivor benefits at 66. There's a different full retirement age for survivor benefits than for retirement benefits. Social Security doesn't tell you this type of stuff. And that's why you're always leaving money on the table, because they don't send you a letter to say, hey, you're 66 now, you can collect your survivor benefit. If you don't know to ask for it, you don't get it. So people leave thousands of dollars on the table. On average, people leave over $10 billion in eligible Social Security benefits on the table every year, which is outrageous. The earliest you can file for a retirement benefit is 62. Assuming your full retirement age is 66, you would get 25% less if you filed at 62. If your full retirement age was 67, you get 30% less. The point is, between 62 and full retirement age, you can start earlier, but you're going to get a reduced benefit amount. And that benefit amount's permanently reduced, right? You start at 62, your benefit's 25% less for the rest of your life. It still may make sense to do it, but the point is you can start earlier and get a reduced benefit. Conversely, if you delay the start of your Social Security, you can get a guaranteed 8% increase in your benefit amount for every year you wait. So from 66 to 70, you know, guaranteed, if you filed at 70, your benefit amount will be 32% higher than it would have been had you filed at 66. On the other hand, you missed collecting 4 years of checks from 66 to 70. So how long does it take for that higher check to recoup what you could have had? Right? That's your break-even point. So if you can afford to, should you always wait to age 70 to file? Where are you getting 8% guaranteed, right? I would say almost never. Almost never. It's very rare that I would see waiting to 70 would be your optimal filing strategy, but I'll go into specifics about that later in the presentation. So I'm just going to throw some quizzes in here as we go along. What's the earliest age you can apply for a survivor benefit? Well, we know you can apply for your retirement benefit as early as 62, but a survivor benefit you can apply as early as age 60. And if you're disabled, you can file as early as age 50. If you applied for a survivor benefit at 60, you would get 28.5% less than if you waited until your full retirement age. So just know that it's a different filing age for survivor benefits versus retirement benefits. All right, the first myth, Social Security doesn't pay that much. I hear this all the time. What's the big deal? Social Security doesn't pay that much. I'm like, really? For a typical middle-income couple over a 20-year retirement, they're going to get at least $1.4 million from Social Security. From 66 to 86, easily. That's for somebody who had a $2,200 a month benefit amount. If you were a high income earner your whole life, your benefit amount could be easily $3,600 a month, which means you're going to get well over $2.3 million from Social Security. Many of my clients are collecting over $120,000 a year in combined Social Security retirement benefit. This is one of the richest pensions ever created, and nobody gets it. Nobody gets it. It's unbelievable. People are worried that Social Security is going to run out of money. It's going to go bankrupt. And if that happens, they're not going to get any Social Security benefits. Well, is that true? No, it's not true. What you hear in the press is that the Social Security Trust Fund is going to run out of money in 2034. And if that happens and you're collecting Social Security, what happens to your check? Do you stop getting anything? No, you'd still get about 80% of your benefit amount, even if the trust fund went to zero. The trust fund has over $3 trillion in it right now. But even if it went to zero, your benefits would be cut by 20%. But that assumes if they do nothing. I think they're going to do something. The way I look at Social Security is this. Over 70 million Americans are collecting a check from Social Security, and 20% of them have no other income. What are they going to do? Take Social Security away? I don't think so. 40% of people collecting Social Security are on the poverty level. They're not going to take Social Security away. Now, are they going to make changes? They absolutely are going to make some kind of changes, right? And there's so many levers they can pull. They could delay the full retirement age from 67 to 68 to 69 to 70. They could put a cap on the cost of living increases or eliminate it. They could increase the taxation of Social Security. You only pay Social Security taxes on income up to 168,000, but you pay Medicare taxes on all your income. So if you have income like $1 million, you're only paying Social Security tax on the first 168. So they could easily raise the taxable wage base. So there's a lot of things they can do. This whole thing about Social Security is a Ponzi scheme, we're going to run out of money, is outrageous. Okay, this is a program that's funded primarily by tax receipts. It'll be around, but again, nowadays, especially, who knows, right? Anything could happen. Okay, you can never change your Social Security filing options once you file. So what if you make a filing decision and then 6 months later, you're like, oh, geez, that was dumb. Why did I do that? I just talked to my smart friend who said I should have done something different. Can you undo your filing election? Well, here's the rules. You basically have two minor exit strategies. You have up to 12 months to pay Social Security back all the money they paid you, and they will give you one do-over. So you can undo your filing election one time, provided you have up to 12 months to do that, right? After 12 months, you can't change it. Then you're locked in. The only other thing you can do is between your full retirement age and 70. Let's say your full retirement age is 66. Between 66 and 70, if you want to, and you're collecting Social Security, you can have them suspend your benefits, stop paying you, and then your benefit amount will start increasing again at the rate of 8% a year. So why would you do that? Let's say you retired at 66, you filed for Social Security. At 67, you got a consulting job, and they said, you know, we're going to pay you $100,000 for a year. You say, all right, you know what? Now I don't need my Social Security. I'm going to suspend my check at 68. Or rather at 67, and turn it back on at 68 when my consulting job's done. So you've suspended your check for a year. Now your check, when it gets turned on, is going to be 8% higher for the rest of your life. You could do that as many times as you want. You could suspend it at 67 to age 70, and then your check will be 24% higher. You can stop and start. You don't have to suspend for a whole year. You could suspend for 6 months, and it'll be 4% higher. 2 years, it'll be 16% higher. You can stop and start, but you can't suspend prior to full retirement age. So between 62 and 66, let's say you filed at 65 and you wanted to suspend at 66. You can't suspend prior to full retirement age, but you can between full retirement age and age 70. So that's a tool you can use depending on how your retirement plays out. Spousal benefits are no longer available. I'm convinced half the people at Social Security don't understand spousal benefits, and I don't blame them. There used to be 3 different kinds of spousal benefits. Then there were only 2, and now there's only 1. And a lot of times my clients who apply for spousal benefits are told they're not eligible, which is not correct. Okay, there are scenarios where you can collect a spousal benefit. So the spousal benefit that's still in play says that if we have a couple and one spouse's benefit is less than half of the others, then the spouse with the lower benefits entitled to the greater of their own or half of their spouse's benefit. So I'll give you an example. Let's say the husband's benefit at 66 is $3,000 and the wife's benefit at 66 is $1,000. What is she eligible to collect? 1,000? No, she's eligible to collect an amount equal to half of his. Half of his is 1,500. So she's entitled to collect her own 1,000 plus another $500 as a spousal add-on. That's a spousal benefit. But she doesn't get it automatically. A couple of things have to happen. One, her husband has to be collecting his benefit in order for her to get that extra $500. If he's not collecting, if he says, I want to defer to 70, she can only get her $1,000 at 66. Once he files at 70, she can get that extra 500. Now, a lot of people think that, oh, if the husband says, my benefit at 66 is 3,000. If I wait to 70, it's 4,000. I'll wait to 70 and then my wife will get half of the 4,000. No, she won't. She can never get more than half of what her spouse would have received at his age 66. So she can never get more than 1,500, even if he waits to 7. So for her to get the full spousal add-on, that extra $500, he has to be collecting and she has to reach her full retirement age. If she filed for her benefits early at 62, she would get a reduced benefit and a reduced spousal benefit. Okay, so the point is, if one spouse's benefits less than half of the others, when you compare their full retirement age benefits, there's a spousal benefit available, but it doesn't get paid automatically. You have to file for it. All right, your marriage has to last at least 10 years to qualify for a survivor benefit. Now, a lot of people know the 10-year rule for Social Security. The 10-year rule relates specifically to divorce benefits, not spousal benefits, okay? So to collect a survivor benefit off of a spouse, off of a married spouse, your marriage has to last 9 months or longer. But if you're divorced, your marriage had to last 10 years or longer. Okay. Now, even the 9-month rule has exceptions. One thing I learned about Social Security, I said there's 2,700 rules. I think there's like 6 rules and 2,700 exceptions, right? There are exceptions everywhere. So the marriage has to last 9 months for a spouse to collect a survivor benefit, but it depends on how you die, right? If you have a stroke, heart attack, a health event, yes, your marriage had to last 9 months. But if you were in an accident, death occurred as a result of an accident, you don't have to wait the 9 months. Okay, so there are exceptions even to these basic rules. So just understand there's a few different specific rules for spousal, ex-spousal, survivor benefits, etc. You have to know what they are for each specific incident. Now, if your ex-spouse remarries, you can't collect benefits off of them, right? So you're married, you get divorced. You were married for more than 10 years, and now you're divorced. Then your ex-spouse remarries. If you were eligible for an ex-spousal benefit, do you still get it, or do you no longer get it because your ex-spouse remarried? And the answer is, if your ex-spouse remarries, that's his problem, right? Because his new spouse can collect benefits off of him, but so can his former spouse. So in my scenario where the woman was the ex-spouse, eligible to collect an ex-spousal benefit off of their ex, she can continue to collect that benefit regardless of whether he got remarried. But if she gets remarried, she can no longer collect a benefit off of him. All right, no longer could she collect an ex-spousal benefit. But there is one exception. And the exception has to do with survivor benefits. If she gets divorced and her former spouse predeceases her, she's eligible to collect a survivor benefit, but if she gets remarried, she's not eligible to get a survivor benefit. But there is an exception for the survivor benefit rule. If she remarries after her age 60, even though she got remarried, as long as she remarried after her age 60, she's still eligible to collect a survivor benefit off her former spouse. So just to play this out, they were married for more than 10 years. They get divorced. Her ex-husband remarries. She does not remarry. He predeceases her. If his benefit's higher than hers, she can collect 100% of his benefit, and his new wife can collect 100% of his benefit. They both get 100%. They don't even share the benefit. But if she remarries before age 60, she will no longer be eligible to collect a survivor benefit. But if she waits till she's 60 and then gets married, no problem. She can still collect the survivor benefit. You can backdate the start of your Social Security benefits with no restrictions. So people think, geez, I'm going to go into Social Security. I'm 65. I wish I filed at 62. You know what? I'm going to start my benefits at 62. I'm going to go back 6 months. You can't do that, okay? You can't backdate a day if you're filing prior to full retirement age. So between 62 and full retirement age, there is no backdating allowed. But between your full retirement age and 70, you can backdate up to 6 months or full retirement age, whichever is less. So let's say your full retirement age is 66 and you go in at age 67 to file. Can you have them backdate to 66? No, the most you can go is 6 months. So you could get it to 66 and a half if you file at 67, but you can't go all the way back more than 6 months. If your full retirement age is 66 and you go in at 66 and 3 months, you can't go back 6 months. You can only go back to full retirement age, which is 3 months in that example. So backdating is allowed between full retirement age and 70, but not between 62 and your full retirement age. So should you backdate? When you go into Social Security and you're between full retirement age and 70, should you backdate your application? I would say the majority of the time, it's worth it. So my clients that are 67, 68, 69, when they go into file, when I run the numbers, almost every time backdating pays off. Because let's say the benefit at 68 is, I don't know, $3,500, and you backdate 6 months, you can get like a lump sum of 20,000 bucks. And yes, your check amount's 4% lower, but the break-even point's usually 13 to 15 years. So I would rather have that extra money up front, knowing that I could invest it, spend it, do something with it, right? The thing with Social Security is it's a pension you can't outlive, right? It's guaranteed to pay as long as you live, but it's a potential pension. You don't know how many checks you're going to get. So unlike your IRA and 401k, which can get passed on to your heirs, Social Security ends when you do, right? So you have to think about Social Security a little differently than your other retirement assets. So backdating is securing benefits up front, knowing that it takes a long time to break even. So, but you have to run the numbers to see if it makes sense. But there are scenarios where, let's say your spouse was waiting for you to file so they could get a spousal benefit, and you're delaying to get a higher benefit amount. Once you file, that spouse is eligible to collect a spousal benefit. But if you backdate your application 6 months, that spouse can also backdate their spousal benefit. So not only will you get 6 months of missed checks, your spouse will get 6 months of missed spousal benefits. So when you start adding up all the numbers, there could be a substantial amount of money here. And will Social Security explain this to you? Absolutely not. All right. This one blew my mind. The Social Security filing strategy that pays the most money is always the best. Now, I've done over 2,000 individual Social Security plans for clients. A couple of things I've noticed. Not one single client has ever gotten it right. And my clients are smart CPAs, tax attorneys, financial planners. I haven't had anybody get Social Security right. They all try to solve the wrong problem. They're all trying to find the strategy that pays the most money. And what I've learned is the Social Security filing strategy that pays the most money is never the best. And you say, well, that sounds crazy, right? Isn't that why people hired you? I said, no, they didn't hire me to find them the most money. They hired me to find them the best strategy. So why would getting less money be better? Well, I'll give you a scenario. Because you got to look at a lot of different factors. Let's say my client, husband and wife, they have good Social Security benefit amounts. They can afford to delay taking Social Security, max it out at 70. They have longevity in their family. They're both going to live to 90. Great. And when I put their data into my software, it's going to run 567 filing strategies for most couples. Okay, literally hundreds. The strategy that pays the most shows that they should both wait to 70 to get the highest check amount. And if they live to 90, they get the most money. Maybe they get $2.2 million over those 20 years. But then I have another strategy that says, you know what? I think the wife should file at 67 and the husband should file at 68 and a half. And if they do that over their life expectancy again, they get $2.1 million, 100,000 less. So why would 100,000 less be better? Well, when do you get that extra 100,000? Not for 25 years. What's that worth in today's dollars, right? What if they don't live to 90? What if somebody gets sick? What if you had taken the upfront money? You could have done something with it. In that scenario that I described, they could have collected $200,000 by the time they would have got their first check at 70, right? What if they get hit by a bus at 70? You don't know. It's going to take a long time for them to recoup what they could have already had, probably in the early 80s. And then they're waiting to get 100,000 more in 25 years. Who cares? We don't even know what Social Security is going to look like in 25 years or 5 years or tomorrow for that matter, right? So you have to risk affect these cash flows. You're more likely to get the first 5 or 10 years of checks than the last 5 or 10. You have to look at the net present value. You have to look at the break-even point. You have to look at what else could you do with that money. There's so many other factors that come into play. So I still show all my clients, here's the one strategy that pays the most. And then I look for the sweet spot. I look for that best filing strategy, the one that gets them the most money by the time they would have gotten their check at 70 without leaving too much money on the table down the road. And you can only do that by running hundreds of side-by-side cash flow scenarios, which is what I do when I do a Social Security analysis. Now, your benefits are based on your last 5 years of earnings. I hear this all the time. Your Social Security benefit is based on your highest 35 years of indexed earning. If you have an account at Social Security, and you absolutely should, go to ssa.gov, right? Social Security Administration.gov, create an account, look up your earnings history, see what Social Security has, because sometimes they miss years of earnings. Make sure they have the right records, okay? So Social Security is going to say, well, what are your highest 35 years of earnings? They're going to index them into today's dollars, and they're going to go through this crazy formula, which I won't describe on this webinar. But the point is, it's based on your highest 35. So let's say you had 45 years of earnings. They're going to take your highest 35. If you have 20 years of earnings, they'll put those 20 years of earnings in, but then they'll put 15 zeros in. And so your average benefit amount is going to drop, right? Because you don't have 35 years of earnings. Now, to qualify for Social Security benefit at all, you need 10 years of earnings, okay? Now, specifically what you need are 40 quarters. You need to make $1,810 in a quarter, and you need 40 quarters. They don't have to be consecutive quarters. You just need a total of 10 years or 40 quarters of earnings to qualify for a benefit. Now, even if you only had 10 years of earnings, they're going to put those 10 years in and 25 zeros, right? Because they're based on your highest 35, but you'll still get a benefit amount. I have a client I just spoke to yesterday. She's worth a lot of money, but she was a stay-at-home mom most of her life. She had 38 quarters. So her Social Security benefit is zero. I said, are you kidding me? If you can make $3,600, you'll get a $500,000 pension from Social Security. Social Security doesn't tell you that. There's nothing on your statement that says if you get these 2 more credits, you'll have 40 credits and here's your benefit amount. So these are the things that people need to know. And by the way, whether you need Social Security or not, you should take it, right? Warren Buffett collects Social Security, right? You paid into the system, you're entitled to get it. You should get it, but you need to know the basic rules. And that is, you need at least 10 years of earned income to qualify for a benefit, but it's based on your highest 35. All right, another quiz here. If you start collecting your Social Security, but you're still working, will your Social Security benefit amount increase anymore? Remember I said it's based on your highest 35 years of indexed earnings. If you're 66, 68, 70, you're still working, but you already started collecting your Social Security. Is it frozen, right? And then once you turn the trigger on for Social Security, will they increase your benefit amount? Yes, even if you're collecting every year you have earnings, if any of those earnings are higher than the prior 35 years, they're going to automatically recalculate your benefit. So you will get credit for those years of earnings because you're still paying Social Security taxes on those earnings. So once you start your benefit, if you still have earned income, they're still going to every year adjust your benefit amount. All right, if your combined household income in a year exceeds the earnings limit, right? If you're filing prior to full retirement age, then your Social Security benefit will be reduced or eliminated for that year. So here's the thing. Between 62 and full retirement age, if you make more than $23,400, every $2 you earn above that, they're going to take back $1 of Social Security. So for most people, filing before full retirement age doesn't make sense if they're still working and earning. But if their earnings are under 23.4, there's no penalty. But what if, let's say, the wife makes 20,000 and could file, and the husband makes 200,000. They're way over the 23,400, but Social Security only looks at the income per spouse. So the spouse that has the $20,000 income can file, the one with the $200,000 income can't. Social Security looks at combined income when they determine the taxation of Social Security benefits, but not for the earnings test. So the earnings test says between 62 and full retirement age, if your own individual personal earnings exceed 23,400, that's when you're going to get a reduced benefit amount. And when I'm talking about earnings, I'm not talking about IRA distributions, investment income, pension income. I'm talking about W-2 income, 1099 income, wages, right? Those are the earnings that they're looking at when they do the earnings test. All right. Wealthy people should delay filing to age 70 to avoid taxes on Social Security and to receive those delayed retirement credits. So if you said, look, I have plenty of money, I can afford to delay the start of Social Security. Why would I start it at 66 and pay taxes on it? Why wouldn't I delay to age 70? Every year I delay, my check amount increases 8% a year. Where am I getting 8% guaranteed, right? So all my wealthy clients, their CPAs, tax attorneys, financial planners, all their smart friends say, you don't need Social Security. Don't take it now. Delay it to 70, max it out. You're getting 8% a year increase. If you take it now, you're going to pay taxes on it, right? That's the advice you're getting. And the Wall Street Journal interviewed me for an article a few years ago to say, what should wealthy people do about Social Security? I said, well, that's what they're being told. Don't take it, delay it. I tell them do the exact opposite. Take it as soon as you can. Now, why would you do that and pay taxes on it? Do not let the tax tail wag the dog when we decide when to file for Social Security. You're going to try to save pennies on taxes and you're going to lose dollars in benefits. All right. So when you look at Social Security, I mean, now these are for some very wealthy clients, but let's say they don't need the Social Security money, but they have an estate tax problem, or they want to leave a legacy to kids or grandchildren, right? I tell them, look, why wait to 70 to get 90,000 more in 25 years? Take it now, secure those benefits, and let's see if there's not a smarter or better way to use that money. So some people are very wealthy, right? If you're worth more than $28 million, you have an estate tax problem, a federal estate tax problem. Every dollar you earn above that 28 million, there's a 40% estate tax. So I had a client, he's worth $100 million. He doesn't need Social Security. He says, Ash, I'm not even sure I'm going to file. It's not worth my time. I said, really? I said, so 10 minutes of your time is worth more than 2 million guaranteed 100% income and estate tax free. He said, Social Security's not going to pay me $2 million tax free. I said, they might. I said, how's your health? He said, good. And your wife? Yeah, she's healthy. I said, great. Here's what I want you to do. You're 66 now, full retirement age. You and your wife filed for your benefits today. Just take it. You're going to get like 50 grand. After tax, you're going to get like 35,000. Take the 35,000 after tax, gift it into an irrevocable life insurance trust. It'll fund like a $2 million life insurance policy. So now I have Social Security paying the premium on a $2 million income and estate tax-free asset. I said, now you have $2 million you can use to pay your estate taxes or leave to your kids or grandkids. What I did was I turned a potential income stream from Social Security into a guaranteed $2 million income and estate tax-free asset. They may get one check from Social Security, get hit by a bus. Instead of Social Security keeping their $2 million, now we've created a $2 million tax-free asset. Now, do you have to be wealthy to do that? No. I had a client, she was a divorced woman from J&J, retired at 63. She had a daughter and a granddaughter. She liked her daughter, but she loved her granddaughter. So she said, you know what? I want to make sure there's money for my granddaughter in case something happens to me. I'm thinking of moving a $500,000 into a trust for a benefit. I said, don't do that. Let's get Social Security to pay for it. So I said, we're going to take $10,000 a year from your Social Security. It's going to fund a $1 million life insurance policy in a trust for the benefit of your granddaughter. So now you can spend all your money. You know, whether you're around 20 years or 20 days, she's going to get $1 million tax-free for her benefit. So again, what's the smartest and best use of Social Security? How do you integrate it into your overall retirement plan? So whether you're wealthy or not wealthy, maybe you need long-term care insurance, right? Maybe you have some retirement assets, savings, etc. But if you have a long-term care event, you could get wiped out. Maybe using some of your Social Security to fund long-term care insurance is a smart way to protect all of your savings, right? So when I do Social Security analysis, I always put Social Security under a microscope. I want to make sure we're getting all our eligible benefits, but I also want to know what's the smartest and best use of that money. So you have to integrate it into an overall retirement plan. You have to see where the holes are in your retirement plan and where does Social Security fit in. All right. Social Security benefits do not affect HSA contributions. So people who are contributing to a health savings account, it's like one of the greatest things you can do. It's triple tax-free, right? You make a contribution, get a tax deduction. The money grows tax deferred, and when you take it out to pay for healthcare costs, it comes out tax-free. But you can't contribute to an HSA account if you're on Medicare. So what does Social Security have to do with Medicare? Well, if you're 65 years or older and you file for Social Security, they automatically sign you up for Medicare Part A, which is free. So that's not the problem. The problem is you're now technically on Medicare. If you're technically on Medicare, you can no longer contribute to a health savings account. So the person's like, I didn't file for Medicare. I filed for Social Security. I said, yeah, but they will automatically sign you up for Medicare Part A. So not only do you have to stop contributing to your health savings account, you're supposed to have stopped 6 months prior to starting your Social Security. Okay, so these are gotchas that you have to be aware of. So again, the intent here was not to go on Medicare. You're still working, you're on your company health insurance plan. You're not on Medicare, but you're on Social Security. And because you're on Social Security, they're going to sign you up for Medicare Part A, and that's going to knock you out from making contributions to a health savings account. If you continue to make those contributions, there'll be penalties, and all the contributions are going to be subject to income tax. So you need to stop immediately. All right, Social Security benefits are exempt from taxes. People have no clue, right? How is Social Security taxed? And the thing is, it depends, right? It depends on what? It depends on your provisional income. Social Security is taxed entirely different than investment income or wages. It's taxed under provisional income. So they look at your adjusted gross income plus half your Social Security plus any muni bond interest. If you add all of that up and say you're married filing jointly, if that provisional income exceeds $44,000, then you have to include 85% of your Social Security benefits in your federal taxable income, just like wages. So 15% is exempt. The majority of states do not tax Social Security. New Jersey does not tax Social Security. New York doesn't tax Social Security. Pennsylvania doesn't. Okay, most states do not tax Social Security. But if you have provisional income over 44,000, you have to include 85% of Social Security in your federal taxable income. So it's still tax favored, right? Because you're not paying on 100% federal and you're not paying any on state. But the point is, it's not tax exempt. If your provisional income was under 32,000, then it is 100% exempt from federal taxes. And between 32 and 44, it's 50% you have to include in your federal taxable income. So the answer is it depends on what your provisional income is. If you live outside the United States, you can't collect your Social Security benefits. Not true. All right. I have clients in Israel, Canada, Britain. These are Americans, not even American citizens. If you paid into Social Security, you don't have to be an American citizen to collect Social Security. You paid into it. So now you're entitled to get your benefit. So if you live overseas, Social Security will pay, they do direct deposit into a bank account. So you can live overseas and collect Social Security benefits. So where you reside is irrelevant. There were big changes for people that had non-covered pensions, meaning pensions where they didn't pay Social Security taxes on, and then they started collecting a Social Security benefit. Those benefits used to be reduced, but January 5th of this year, President Biden signed legislation to eliminate the penalties for the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset. So now 3.2 million Americans are going to get a higher Social Security benefit because they're no longer going to be penalized because they have a non-covered pension. So like police officers, firefighters in New Jersey, if they worked and earned and had a Social Security benefit, those benefits were reduced as much as $600 a month because of the windfall elimination provision. Well, that's all gone now. I just spoke to 1,000 police officers in Atlantic City to explain the new rules where now they're going to get, not only are they going to get higher benefits, they're going to be retroactive to January of 2024. So they're eligible to receive quite a bit of money now. Social Security agents are permitted to offer advice. Absolutely not. They're actually prohibited from offering advice. I'll go even farther. They shouldn't be advising anybody on Social Security. They barely know their own rules, but even if they know the rules, they don't know your financial position. They don't know how much you have in IRAs, 401ks. They don't know your health. They don't know your marital status and what other eligible benefits you're entitled to. They don't know if you own life insurance, long-term. They don't know any of that. Social Security filing is a financial planning decision. All right. It's a pension. And once you file, you're locked in for the rest of your life, right? Other than those two minor exceptions. But the point is, the best filing strategy has to has a lot to do with all of that other stuff, not just your Social Security benefits. So don't take advice from Social Security agents. They shouldn't be offering it. They're prohibited from offering advice. All right, you can collect a Social Security spousal benefit, regardless of when your spouse files for their benefit. Well, we know that's not true, right? I said before, your spouse has to be collecting in order for you to collect off of them. But you have to be married for at least 12 months to get a spousal benefit. So just to recap, you have to be married 9 months for the survivor benefit, 12 months for the spousal benefit, and 10 years for the divorce benefit. Okay, so you can't just collect a spousal benefit. You had to have been married for at least 12 months, and your spouse has to be collecting their benefit. Because if they're not collecting their benefit, there's no spousal benefit to collect off of, right? So you have to coordinate benefits. That's why when I do Social Security plannings for couples, when one spouse files affects when the other spouse should file. Don't make the mistake of looking at your own personal Social Security benefit and say, oh, at 66, I get this amount, for 25 years. If I wait to 70, get a higher amount for fewer years, and decide whether you don't understand. If you predecease your spouse, your check could live on 10 years after you're dead, right? As a survivor benefit. So you always have to look at Social Security benefits as a couple. And when I say a couple, I mean a married couple, a divorced couple, widowers, right? You always have to look at the whole package. You can't just look at your own individual benefit amount. All right. How long does your marriage have to last to collect a spousal benefit? For married couples, I just said 12 months. Ex-spousal benefits, you have to be married at least 10 years. But to collect the ex-spousal benefit, your ex-spouse has to be collecting, or you have to be divorced for 2 years or longer. So if the ex-spouse says, I hate you, I ain't filing because I don't want you to get the ex-spousal benefit. After 2 years, it doesn't matter. You can collect off of them. Whereas if you're married, you have to wait for your spouse to collect. Okay, there's no 2-year limit. So slightly different rules for ex-spouses versus spouses. Okay, you can never recoup what you paid into Social Security. I hear this all the time. Oh, I paid into my whole life. I hope I get the money back. Are you kidding me? You get your money back in about 5.5 to 6 years. All right. Most of the money you're getting from Social Security is being paid by the government. Okay, so yes, you paid into it and you're entitled to get it, and you should. That's the deal. But the notion that you're never going to get back all the money you paid in is ridiculous. And a lot of people say, well, if I had the money, I could have invested it and made a lot more money on it. Maybe. But when you look at human nature, a lot of people don't save that money. They spend it, right? So to some extent, Social Security is a forced savings plan, but you also have somebody else contributing into that plan. You're making your contribution, your employer's making a contribution, and the government's also paying into it. So it's a very rich pension. So you shouldn't feel like, oh, I paid into this and I'm not going to get value out of it. You're going to get a lot of value out of it. All right, same-sex couples don't qualify for the same Social Security benefits as heterosexual couples. That's not the case anymore. In 2015, when they legalized same-sex marriage, now all those same-sex couples have the same benefits as heterosexual married couples. They can do spousal, survivor, child benefits, child and care benefits, survivor benefit, all the same benefits as heterosexual couples. So in 2015, I got a lot of new clients because that was the first time they could start planning as a couple for joint benefits for Social Security. Only those receiving a Social Security check will get the cost of living increases. Every January, Social Security announces a cost of living increase. This past January was 2.5%. 3 years ago was 8.7%, the highest in 40 years. But what if you're not collecting Social Security and they announce a cost of living increase? Do you get it? Yes. From age 62 on, anytime Social Security announces a cost of living increase, if you're receiving a check, your check will increase by that amount. If you're not receiving a check, all your projected benefits will increase by that cost of living benefit amount. So I had a client yesterday, she's 62. She says, well, it says here at my full retirement age, 66, I'm going to get $3,000. I said, no, you're not. All the Social Security statements are wrong, all of them, because they don't include these cost of living increases until they're announced. I said between 62 and 66, there could be 4 increases in your check amount. And if you're not collecting, your projected benefits will increase by those cost of living increases. So just know that you don't actually have to race in to file for Social Security because you want the cost of living increase. No, you're going to get it regardless. It'll be added to your projected benefit amount if you're not collecting, and added to your check if you are collecting. All right, both checks paid to a couple continue to be paid when one spouse passes. I hear this all the time. No, that doesn't happen. At the death of the first spouse, the surviving spouse gets the higher of the 2 checks, but not both. Okay? So if the husband's checks $3,000 and the wife's checks $2,000, if the husband predeceases the wife, she'll lose her $2,000 check, but she'll get 100% of his check. She'll get $3,000. If the reverse happens, if the wife predeceased the husband, he'll just keep collecting his check because it's higher, right? You don't get both. Now, there was a story of a woman whose husband died, and she didn't want to give up his check, so she put him in a freezer for 8 years, kept collecting his check. So don't do that. She's in jail now. Bad idea. Okay. All right. Your income will not affect your Social Security benefits when filing prior to full retirement age. Well, we know that's not true, right? I've been pounding on this. If you collect your Social Security between 62 and full retirement age, the most you're allowed to earn is $23,400, and every $2 you earn above that, they take back $1 of Social Security. So, for example, if your income was $33,400, you're over by $10,000. Social Security is going to keep the first $5,000 of your Social Security benefits. The year that you reach your full retirement age, the exemption amount increases from $23,400 to $62,160. So that 1 year where you reach your full retirement age, you're allowed to earn more money. But if you exceed the 62, every $3 you exceed it, they take back $1. So again, this whole earnings limitation and penalties only applies between age 62 and full retirement age. Once you get to full retirement age, make $1 million, doesn't matter. There's no more penalties for Social Security earnings, right? So just know, some people want to file early. You got to navigate these earnings limits. You need 10 consecutive years of earnings to qualify for Social Security benefits. Well, like I said earlier, you need 40 quarters. You need to make $1,810 in a quarter to get a credit, and you need 40 credits. You need a total of 40 credits. They do not have to be consecutive years. So your cumulative quarters have to be 40, which is equivalent to 10 years of earnings, but not consecutive years of earnings. So it's not about when you have the earnings. It's once you cumulatively have 40 quarters where you earned $1,810. Now, the $1,810 is today's number, right? 20 years ago, it was probably $900. Doesn't matter. The point is, whatever that quarterly earning requirement is, once you reach it, you qualify for a quarter. Now, let's say, like my client yesterday, she has 38 credits. She needs $3,620 to get 2 more credits to get a Social Security benefit. What if she goes out tomorrow and gets a job and she gets paid this month $3,600? Does she qualify automatically? No, she doesn't. You have to get through 2 quarters in time as well. So she met the earnings requirement, the $3,600, but she hasn't met the 2 quarters of time requirement. Once those 2 quarters pass, then she'll get credit for both of those credits. All right, you must be divorced for 10 years to qualify for ex-spousal benefits. All right. And that's the tricky word here. You have to be divorced for 10 years. No, you have to be married for 10 years to qualify for an ex-spousal benefit. Okay. And then if you're going to collect that ex-spousal benefit, you have to be divorced for 2 years or longer. And or if your ex is collecting, you don't have to wait the 2 years. But if he's not collecting, you have to wait the 2 years. And at that point, you can collect. Now, I said before, there are crazy exceptions in the Social Security Code. I teach classes to matrimonial attorneys, right? Family law attorneys. I said, are there any exceptions to the 10-year rule? You always have to be married for 10 years. They're like, yes. I said, no, there are lots of exceptions. I had an example of this. My client, they were married to each other for 5.5 years and got divorced. A year and a half later, they remarried each other. And on the 10th anniversary of their first marriage, they got divorced again. So for that 10-year period, they were married except right in the middle for a year and a half. So in total, they were married for 8.5 years. So I asked these divorce attorneys, can they collect ex-spousal benefits? They said no, because they weren't married for 10 years. I said, yes, they can. Because there's another exception that says if you remarry the same person by December 31st of the following year, you're deemed to be married in each of those years, so you qualify. So what does that tell you? Well, it tells me there was a congressman who had this situation, right? Because this makes no sense, but it's in the code. So there's all kinds of crazy exceptions, which is why people will end up leaving money on the table. All right, there are no exceptions to the 10-year rule for ex-spousal benefits. This is the example that I just said. There are lots of different exceptions, but it's not a hard and fast 10-year rule. I had a client who was married to a guy for 3 years, got divorced, 2 years later remarried him. 3 months into their marriage, he died. She called Social Security and said, my spouse passed. I want to file for survivor benefits. They said, you're not eligible because you were only married to him for 3 months. You need to be married to him for 9 months. So when her attorney called me, she said, is there anything we can do for this woman? I said, well, she ever married before? They said, yeah, actually, she married the same guy 5 years ago. They were married for 3 years. I said, that's great news. I said, because she was married to him previously. They're going to count those 3 years in the 9-month requirement for survivor benefits. So there's all kinds of crazy examples in the code that people don't know. I don't know, 2,700 rules. How are you supposed to know these rules? I know them, but that's my problem. All right. If you qualify for ex-spousal survivor benefits and your ex-spouse remarries, you're required to split the survivor benefit with your ex-spouse's new spouse, right? And the answer is no. If you get divorced and don't remarry, or remarry after age 60, but if your ex-spouse gets remarried and predeceases you, his new wife can collect 100% of his benefit, and you can collect 100% of his benefit. I have a client, she was married to 3 different guys for 10 years each. My first question is, are any of them alive? She goes, yeah, one's alive, 2 are dead. I said, that's great news. Because now we got to look at the 2 dead ones and say, who's got the higher benefit? You can't get them both, but you can get the higher of the 2. So again, you really have to dig deeper when it comes to Social Security is not going to do this work for you, right? You have to know the rules or work with somebody that does. When we do retirement income planning at OneTeam Financial, right, Social Security is pivotal in any kind of retirement income plan. Why is that? Because when you look at retiring, you want to see, do you have any sources of guaranteed income? That limits you to Social Security, other pensions, or annuities. Everything else is subject to the stock market or interest rates. So when we design retirement plans for our clients, we use an award-winning approach called the bucket plan. It's about segmenting your assets by time and purpose. So yes, you need a liquid asset bucket for emergency funds, large expenses you're expecting, but you have to have an income engine, right? Your soon bucket. This is the income that's going to generate your income in retirement, and you segment assets for that bucket, and the other money you don't need to generate income, you leave in the later bucket so it can ride out market volatility. But what's in the soon bucket? Well, Social Security, right? Because it's income you can't outlive. So when people say to me, should I file for Social Security first and delay taking distributions from retirement accounts, or start distributions from retirement accounts and delay the start of Social Security to get a higher benefit amount? I said neither. Okay, what you do is solve for the sweet spot, solve for that optimal filing strategy. Once we know what those cash flows look like, we're going to supplement the income we need from our other buckets of money. But all retirement planning starts with your guaranteed income streams, any pensions, Social Security pension, or any kind of guaranteed income streams you have. So when I do Social Security plans for clients, and most of my clients are late 50s to 70, and I tell them, look, I offer anybody on this call or anybody anywhere a 15-minute complimentary consultation. Call me, ask me your question, tell me your situation. I'll share some ideas with you to see if you want to figure it out on your own. At least you'll have better information. But if you want me to actually do a customized analysis and find that Social Security sweet spot for listeners today, members of the NJBIA, I discount my fees. So my regular fee is $3,500 for couples. I discount it to $2,500. That's a one-time flat fee for couples. And if you're single, divorced, widowed, it's $1,500. And I tell my clients, for couples, they get about 500 checks from Social Security. I tell them, invest part of your first check to get it right, because it is complicated. And once you pull the trigger on this pension, you're locked in for the rest of your life. So definitely it's worth finding out what your optimal filing strategy is. But at the very least, take advantage of my 15-minute complimentary consultation and I can answer your questions. And I'll just close with this. I do a lot of speaking engagements like this, and I do it all over the world. And Social Security is a hot topic right now. People who are, approaching retirement, in retirement, and as I said, my clients are typically late 50s to 70. You want to get information on it. So I speak to women's groups, I speak to CPA firms, law firms, all kinds of different organizations. So if this topic interests you and want to talk to me about any kind of speaking engagement, reach out to myself or my colleague Gina Ferrence. You have our contact information there, and we would be happy to talk to you about that. So with that, I don't know, Katie, if we have questions or.
Yes, Ash, thank you so much. That was just so much information. And we did have a couple questions come through in the chat, so I am going to read those over to you if you don't mind. Someone had a question on the spousal benefit. It is 50% of the higher earning spousal benefit at NRA, not 50% of age 70 benefit, assuming they wait till 70 to claim.
Yes, correct. Regardless of what age they are when they claim, you're going to look at each spouse's benefit at each full retirement age, each of their individual full retirement ages. So in my simple example, if the husband's full retirement age is 66 and the wife's full retirement age is 66, and the husband's benefit's 3,000 and the wife's is 1,000, the wife's entitled to 1,500. If the husband waited to 70 and got 4,000, the wife can never get more than half of what he would have had at 66, half of the 3,000.
Somebody wrote, and then they corrected themselves, I believe. They were asking of a survivor benefit of $250, but then they said they were thinking of the death benefit. Is that $255?
Yeah, it's a $255 death benefit. That hasn't changed in I don't know how long. I don't know what you can do with $255 to bury somebody, but so the survivor benefit is 100% of your deceased spouse's benefit if it's higher than yours. But you also get this check for $255 as a death benefit check.
If I retire at 65 before full retirement age, am I entitled to 100% of ex-spouse benefits? They were married for over 10 years.
And the answer is no. The amount you're eligible for depends on your age at the time you file. So if you file prior to full retirement age, you're going to get a reduced ex-spousal benefit. If you wait to your full retirement age, you'll get the full ex-spousal benefit.
Is an FSA different than an HSA? Can I have an FSA if I have Medicare Part A?
Yes, they are different, and you can have an FSA. That rule is specific to the health savings account, the HSA. So FSAs are no problem.
How difficult will it be to file to collect benefits with layoffs? Do you need to make an appointment or can you walk in to start receiving benefits?
Okay. Well, you have some options regarding filing. You can go online and file online, which is the majority of my clients do that. You can call Social Security. You're going to be on hold for an hour or more or get cut off 2 or 3 times. It's gotten a lot worse now that they're laying off people. But you could file over the phone. So if you call them to say, I want to file, once you get through, the initial call will be to schedule the appointment to do the actual filing. You're not going to get a call. Or you can, on that call, arrange to schedule an appointment at an office. You can't just walk into an office and file. You can walk into an office to schedule an appointment, but not to get immediate attention.
At what age can I collect benefits from an ex-spouse that I was married to for over 10 years? And then additionally, what if he passes away?
Okay. You can collect an ex-spousal benefit as early as age 62 if you're married more than 10 years. but you would get a reduced benefit. If you waited till your full retirement age, you would get the full ex-spousal benefit. Your ex-spouse has to either be collecting or you have to be divorced for 2 years or longer to collect. The survivor benefit you can collect as early as age 60 or 50 if you're disabled. But you're always subject to the earnings test, the $23,400 income limit, anytime you file for any kind of benefits, including survivor benefits, prior to full retirement age. If you're still working and earning and making more than $23,400, your benefits are going to be reduced or eliminated, right? Every $2 above that, they take back $1.
Does your ex-spouse know that you are collecting?
No, and there's no need. Social Security doesn't care. They're just going to look up his benefit amount. It doesn't take any money away from them. They're not informed about it, and it's not a problem. You just have to have your marriage certificate and divorce certificate to prove you were married 10 years or longer.
What is the highest possible amount that is paid for high earning individuals at full retirement age?
Okay. Now that number changes every year, but let's say somebody was a high income earner and retired this year. Their full retirement age benefit would be around $3,800 a month or so, maybe $4,000. And if they delayed to 70, it's probably $5,000, $5,100 a month.
Wonderful. Is there anyone else that has? I think that's all the questions we had for now, unless anyone has one. I don't see anything else
You
coming.
don't see my mark? All right. Well, they have my
Yep, we
contact
put your contact information in if anybody would like to book the complimentary session, and then the amazingly reduced rates that he's giving for everybody here. Everyone, don't forget you'll receive a recording of today's program via email next week. And if your team is interested in building leadership skills, we've got a great program on Friday on the new era of leadership. If you'd like a complimentary ticket, just drop me a note in the chat and I'll get you registered. Don't hesitate to reach out for us. And then, so until next time, for Ash at OneTeam Financial and NJBIA, I am Katie Whitcamp, and I thank you for being with us today and wishing you a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Thank you, Katie.